Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia and a major update. At the Lyman region, we know that the Russians have been going on the offensive, but this time around we have confirmation from Shoigu himself, the Russian defense minister. He confirms that the Russian forces has launched a counterattack in the Krasno-Liman direction, advancing 1.5 kilometers in depth and 2 along the front. And basically what he has just announced is the Lyman offensive. So basically the Russians have basically announced, and they already launched as they announced, the Lyman offensive. And this is Lyman. This city of Lyman is currently under Ukrainian control, is previously captured by the Russians, and this time round they have decided to go on the offensive. We have been calling this the Crimea front, based on this position, because of this city, Crimea, because the Ukrainians were on the attack. They were trying to capture this city. So the Russians are now on the offensive. And the latest update we do have is that the Russians have entered Torske. The town here, Torske, the Russians is not exactly within, but they are actually on the northern part of, and they have entered into the northern part of Torske. This information is reported by Remlin 21, as well as by this other, where's that? Remlin 21. Yeah, so and Surya Maps. So Surya Maps and the neutral source has basically announced that the Russian forces have entered Torske. This information, however, is disputed by pro-Ukrainian source. Deep State UA says that there is this is not true, and there's no Russian troops within Torske. And Ryba, another pro-Russian source, what I would think is one of the very highly credible one, they themselves cannot confirm the information. This is also very interesting to show that Ryba is very detached with the rest of the pro-Russian sources or information, because the other pro-Russian sources tends to talk about more or less the same thing, whereas Ryba will write on their own. They have their own analysis and verification methods. So same thing for Deep State UA. Deep State UA do not follow pro-Ukrainian sources. They will have their own ways to verify their information. So currently, Remlin 21 is very convinced, because he have information on the ground, and he first confirms that from his direct sources that he got confirmation our boys are on the outskirts of Torske, fighting to get a foothold in the settlement. And in the later confirmation, he reconfirmed with his sources, which likely because of the contradiction in a lot of information. He says that he repeatedly received confirmation that his sources are fighting on the outskirts of Torske. So the battle are fierce, but they are advancing. So this is, and they also say that their advanced forces are fighting in the Yampil region, and they say that the VDV is about to attack the region. So this he also shares more about the Ukrainians have some gap in the defenses where the Russians can take advantage of, and the Ukrainians will probably send a reinforcement to stabilize the line. So all this information suggests that the Russians are actually really close. And I think with Remlin 21, any information that relates to his sources tends to be really highly accurate so far from my experience reporting on his information. So in the latest information coming from the Russian Defense Ministry, they also confirms that let me click on this. Yeah, they also confirmed that in that direction they have launched attack, and they also repelled Ukrainian attempts to repel them at Torske. So the fighting is now on. The Lyman offensive by the Russian forces is ongoing, which is a kind of a surprise, in not very big surprise, but the Ukrainian of summer offensive is not even over yet, and I mentioned that the Russians are basically hitting them fire with fire over at this region here. Fighting is also reported over at Dibrova, with the Russian forces attacking, while the Ukrainians are actively trying to counterattack to try to hold back the Russian forces over in this entire front line here. And the Ukrainians are trying to attack from the southwest of Dibrova towards this is Dibrova. Oh, I too fast. So southwest of Dibrova, which is controlled by the Russians, they are trying to attack from southwest. So far, no progress, while the Russians continue to march on within the Serebransky forestry. So you can see the actions are becoming clearer over in this region here. The Ukrainians are definitely not holding defense per se. They are actually actively trying to attack. And we have information of the Ukrainians trying to counterattack over at Yampolivka Terny region. And so to try to, maybe redirect Russian forces northward to prevent further collapse into these lines. But I think the Russians are not going to bite this, as because when you have the defense minister announcing an offensive, it looks like it's going to be a committed one. So, and the Russians seldom talk about their offensive. Like when they attack Voleda, they never talk about Voleda offensive. Like, so no, and when it's only when the Wagner forces had so much progress over Soleda region and Bakhmut, that's why the Russian Defense Ministry have to acknowledge it. And I think this is probably the first Russian military-led offensive that is announced since, I would say, Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, where they so-called liberated the entire of the Luhansk region. So this is pretty significant in my opinion, with an announced offensive. So the Russians will have to have results in this front line. And further up north over the Crimea front, we also have fighting reported at the Valley region, just east of Nevsky, with the Russian forces pushing west over in this region. This is likely to draw some Ukrainian forces northward to try to draw away their reinforcement and reserves away from the main front, which is at the towards Lyman. And there is also further fighting with the Ukrainian continue their offensive over at Kamazhenivka. This offensive is started much earlier. It also, I'm not sure how this will develop at this moment, but the Russians committing, if they do not get some results, for example, capturing capturing Torske. For example, there's two towns here. There's Torske, there's Zarishne, and then we have the entire of the forestry region. I think that for this Russian offensive, at minimum, they have to clear out the entire forest all the way up to at least along this region here, close to Yampil. And they will have to capture Zarishne and Torske to really count this as a successful offensive. So anyway, this is just a quick update over at this front, where I just thought it was amazing that the Russian Defense Ministry and the Defense Minister himself actually announced this offensive. This is just something the Russians usually don't do. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next update.